Career transitions can be tough sometimes. Doubt in your own abilities and fear of the unknown can overshadow the next chapter. It's natural. Part of a mentor's role can be removing those obstacles and helping during stressful times. But how do you know if you're receiving the right direction or, if you're a leader, providing the best path forward? Welcome to Yo's Back to Work podcast. I'm your host, Joe McIntyre. On today's episode, we will be discussing how leaders can provide the best support and guidance for those searching for a new career. Today, I am excited to welcome back Ursula Williams, President of Staffing Industry Analysts, or SIA. SIA is the go-to research and advisory firm for everything related to staffing and workforce solutions. SIA provides valuable insights and advice to help businesses navigate the complex staffing world. Ursula has been with SIA since 2015, initially joining as the Senior Vice President of Global Strategy and Marketing. She has held various roles throughout the company, most recently as Chief Operating Officer from 2019 to 2024. And then this year, she was appointed President, overseeing the company's global strategy, operations, and growth. Ursula, welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you, Joe. It's great to be here.
So last time we had you on, we talked about being a quality leader during times of crises. That's tough. It's a challenging environment. Today, we're going to be a little bit more positive, and on this episode, we'll talk about helping others during career changes or during career transitions. Can you tell our audience some of the benefits of having a mentor when you're going through a bit of a transition in your career?
Yeah, I'd love to, Joe. And I've been really fortunate to have some great mentors throughout my career. One of the key benefits is just confidence. It's difficult when you're going through a transition. I mean, right now, I think about people that are going through transitions and there's been some layoffs. And so it wasn't, a voluntary transition. And it's hard. It's scary. You're not exactly really sure where you're going to be. You wonder if there is that job going to be there for me. So I think a mentor is just helpful for one, confidence. I think also just direction and honesty. Often adults working in a job, it's not really a job anymore. It morphs into something that is a little bit of this and a little bit of that. And it has to do with what skills and background you have. And I think when you're going out to find something, you need a mentor, a really strong mentor that's going to say, okay, let's talk about it. What do you want to do? What are your greatest strengths? Where are your holes? What do you really need in your lifestyle? And it's hard. And so if you have a mentor and it's someone you trust, they can be open, direct, honest on the good and easy and fun things, and the supportive things, but also in the areas where you might not want to hear. They also hold you accountable. So I think the accountability aspect of it is really powerful, helping you set deadlines and timelines and specific goals of what you want to do, what you don't want to do, and when you want to do it by. You go from working in a role and you probably have a lot of milestones and accountability to others, and then all of a sudden you're in this transition. It's you. And so it's like having your own little board, your own CEO of your transition is your mentor.
Is there a way or a recommendation you have for someone who wants to find a mentor? How can they go about doing it? Does it need to be this formal mentor-mentee relationship, or is it sometimes you know it when you see it?
It should be, I think you know it when you see it, but I also think that it should be kind of well thought out. Because I don't think that every mentor is good for every situation of what you're going through, right? If we're talking about career transition, I think it's really important to pick one that, is going to have the balance of the things that you need to have. And, and so I think if it's in professional, if you're in a professional space and it's a career transition, you want to probably find someone who's experienced in that and who's done that, or at least can advise on, here's what job changes are about and transitions and that type of thing. If it's something different, then you might want to go find someone that has more experience and leans in it to that way. So I like to be very specific. I think that mentors are not one size fits all. And I think it's okay to have multiple ones too.
Good. So a lot of people go through transitions in their career, whether it's internal, I'm switching to a new role within my company, I'm getting promoted, that can be a big transition. Sometimes it's getting a new job, changing companies, doing something totally different. Does a mentor need to be someone, regardless of whether you're going through an internal or external transition, outside of the company that you work for currently?
It depends. I think that it's I think when they're inside of your company and depending on how big your company is, they might have bias and they don't even realize it. So, I think there's no right or wrong on that particular one, Joe. Sorry,
Mm.
I don't
No,
have
that's
the
fine.
and I think it depends though is probably the best answer I can give. I have always had both. Again, I think inside the company, in the companies I've been in, I've also worked really hard to have sponsors. So your sponsor isn't necessarily your mentor, and I think that gets probably underestimated often. Sometimes your mentor, because they're your mentor, they actually don't advocate as much for you as a sponsor might. Or when they do advocate for you, people are like, oh, yeah, because she's his mentor, kind of thing, of course, but when that sponsor steps up and does it, it is slightly different. So, I think that again, it depends. Um, I just think you have to be careful on if it's inside the company, how close is that mentor to other things that could maybe shape the direction in which you're trying to go.
Got it.
Right. If it's an internal type promotion and transition change, maybe the internal one's great because they have more knowledge of, what's happening inside and can really help you navigate that. If it's outside, maybe somebody on the outside's better.
So, Ursula, you mentioned a few seconds ago that not every mentor-mentee relationship or not every mentor is, one size fits all. But if you're a mentee looking for a mentor, are there some traits that every mentor that you would ideally like to have should have?
Definitely. I mean, they have to have time, right? They have to be supportive. They have to be a good listener. I think a good listener is sometimes even better than a good like somebody who's going to give you advice, because often the individual does know what's good, right for them. And by having somebody listen or ask really good questions, I think a good mentor asks really good questions. I think a mentor is not a cheerleader. They're optimistic and they're supportive and they help you build your confidence, but they also have a very great way of, again, earlier I said holding you accountable or kind of calling out the things that maybe you think are one way and they're another way. So I think those are some of the characteristics that you want to watch for. And then do you have to really like, trust, respect, admire, that person because they're also your source of inspiration while you're going through what you're going through. So, I think that there's definitely characteristics that are just common across, but then there's things that maybe each individual wants to kind of assess before they jump in.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of what we talked about so far has been about what the mentee needs or what the mentee should be looking for. But most of our listeners are probably going to be on that mentor side. They're going to
Yeah.
be hiring managers, they're going to be recruiters. And as a mentor yourself, someone who's been in this industry for a bit, how do you define success as a mentor? How do you know when you've truly helped someone in their career and that you're not just hoping that, like, okay, I hope that was what they needed to hear, but is there a way to kind of know that, okay, I really did help them out?
Yeah, I think in the beginning, recognizing that you actually are the mentor, because there's so much informal mentorship, and people are like, "Oh, you're a mentor." I'm like, "I was," So I think that when you're entering one of those relationships and you're the mentor, I think start off with asking your mentee, "What will success look like?" Like, and is this a short term? Is it a long term? Like, I tend to like to say, if they're like, will you be I'm sure I'll be your mentor. What is success for you? What are we working on? What are we trying to get through? Like, if you just want someone that quarterly we're going to talk and you're going to bring maybe challenges to, that's okay too. But let's define what this is. So I think it's really important for the mentor to do that. Sometimes that's obviously not comfortable for the mentee because they're, typically the mentor is a more powerful positionship or more experienced or whatever. So I think that we owe it to the mentees to be able to frame kind of the relationship and what we want to get out of it. I think it's also important. What's our frequency of touching base? And I would encourage to make it a set frequency as opposed to like, hey, Joe, I'm around when you need me. Just hit me up. I think that that's a different form of working together. I think in a true mentor-mentee relationship, measuring what success looks like, what are the parameters in which we're going to work together, including like how frequently are we going to touch base? Let's find a time that works for both of us. And let's start each one off like almost like we would a meeting. Like let's leave each one with some notes. Let's start each one with an agenda, and let's make sure we get through it. Because often the mentor and mentee form a relationship. I'm highly relational. And so it's easy to all of a sudden your 30 minutes goes by and it's, well, how have you been? And what's going on here? And what happened with that situation there? And all of a sudden you're like, we just talked. We didn't really get to the nuts and bolts of, you said you wanted a promotion in 18 months. We're at 16 months. Have you talked to your manager about your promotion kind of thing? So it's a lot of responsibility to be the mentor. And you got to run it like you'd run your business or your department or one of your goals would be my best advice.
Yeah. I want you to keep your mentor cap on just for a little bit longer, because I think you mentioned something really important there is this ability or this need to have difficult conversations and challenge your mentees or challenge those around you. It can be very easy to just be on their side, like you said, be that cheerleader, be that advocate, be that sponsor. But being a mentor requires challenging people. Is there any advice that you can give to either current or future mentors to kind of break past that probably desire to want to be a support person for your mentee, but actually, getting a little bit uncomfortable and needing to challenge them? So is there anything you found that is successful to you or helpful to you in really kind of, putting the pressure on your mentees a little bit and making sure that you're giving them the best advice?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think earlier when I was saying about establishing the best practices or the guiding principles of what the relationship's going to be makes it so easy, because often what happens is you find yourself in that place where you're like, oh, you know what? How am I going to tell her? But if you would have already created the form of relationship then in the beginning, that you're going to be like, look, it's going to be open and honest, and you're going to have feedback, positive and constructive, type thing. And so, I think it's stick to that. Like, don't wait for the moment to come that it's so far down that it's a hard discussion. Just build it in and make it part of what you do. I mean, just today, actually, I wrote to someone and I was like, I read something and I thought it could be a little bit better written. And so I was writing back and I said, look, you probably get tired of me doing this. And you need to know, like, I think your work's great, but I think your work can be even better. And I think that these little tweaks, and think of me as your coach. Don't think of me as the president of SIA coming to you with this. And the person wrote back and said, I absolutely love it. The fact that you take the time to do it and you do it on little things does not make me feel like picked on or that you're overly detailed. He's like, I know how you work. You glanced at it and you saw it. And the fact that you're sharing it is good. It's not uncomfortable. I really appreciate it, right?
If our listeners want to connect with you, how can they reach you?
They are welcome to reach me on LinkedIn. They can IM me. They can connect with me. They can follow me. I'm available by email. I get to see a lot of your customers and at our conferences and our events. So if anyone's listening that happens to be coming one, just come find me. I'm usually on stage and I'd love to meet you.
Perfect. And to our listeners, I also want to thank you for tuning into Yo's Back to Work podcast. To hear future episodes, please subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen in. For Yo's Back to Work, I'm Joe McIntyre. Thanks for listening.